Like any good program manager will tell you, there's lots of activities when you're working on a project, and you can all line them up on a thing called a Gantt chart, and then you can line out the critical path, which means things that have to happen before one another. So I think I've run into a situation there where I've started to clean all the paint and crap off the firewall. As you can see, it's looking pretty clean. I still have some work to do down here, waiting on some tools to come in so I can remove that outer lower cowl to replace that. But in the meantime, I figured, well, I might as well go ahead and do all the work I need to do on the firewall while it's stripped. So that may or may not include doing some significant surgery on the transmission tunnel, because if you recall over here, I'm going to be putting this LS3 based engine with a T56 Magnum in there, and that's a significantly larger transmission than the ST10, sorry about that glare, the ST10 that came out of there. So, in order to determine if that's going to fit, we need to set the angle of this engine. Now, the American Powertrain company that provided the transmission and will provide the drive shaft and a bunch of other accessories seems to indicate that you want the engine angle to be between 1.5 and 4 degrees nose up. So we assume that these frame rails are essentially level. So we'll put that there, zero it out, 0. All right, then we're going to come up here and put this on top of the shifter, the transmission shifter plate, and we can see that we've got 3.3, so that's right in the window. The problem with that is that this is counter to what the instructions said on the SpeedTech Extreme front end. The SpeedTech system said you're supposed to have these adjustable bolts right here drop down so that this little adapter in the middle is hanging down below. Now I assume they indicate you should do that so that they can say that you can install this in the car without having to change a transmission tunnel. But that put the angle of the engine closer to 5 degrees, and when I checked with the builders there at SpeedTech, they seem to indicate that a 1 degree to 3 degree is appropriate. So I've had to go off script a little bit and raise those bolts up to get close to the 3 degrees, which means that almost assuredly I am now going to have to make some major changes to the transmission tunnel. So we'll go ahead and try to do that while we're making other surgery happen on the firewall. But I just wanted to do a quick video to kind of set my line of thinking. But in order to establish how this fits on the car, that means I need to go ahead and put it in the car. As you can note, I haven't put the suspension pieces on there yet. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I'm going to put the front suspension on this. Basically set it up, throw some wheels on it, and rearrange the shop here and try to roll that into the car and probably bolt it into place for the first time of many times to figure out what metal has to be sacrificed to make this fit. So we're going to go ahead and get started on that. All right, I got some of the suspension components set out here on the workbench, so it's a little bit like Christmas right now. These are the upper control arms. They're really nicely made. Really nice welding. All of it looks to be TIG welded. Really thick tube. These cross shafts are really nicely made. So I will say that the detail and the instruction from SpeedTech has been lacking. However, the product itself is really nice. Just for those of you who don't know, in the Camaro world, you adjust your camber by shifting the whole top control arm forward and aft, and they do this on these nicer units by using these little pills that fit right in here. So this is where it will bolt on the car, and I'll show it when it's all bolted in. But you take this pill, and if you want to shift it forward, you kind of just slot it in and bolt it through and orient it that way. If you want it backward, you can flip it around. Of course, the tolerances are nice and tight. You can flip it around. If you want it to go the other way, then they've got a center one if you want somewhere in the middle. So a nice quick adjustability. So there's the other one. And then we've got the lower control arms here. They're quite beefy. I mean, they're heavy. probably lighter than the ones that are on the car, but certainly much stronger too. And you can see they've got it really cut out here so you can get that, you know, 335 I think is the tire width they advertise you can run on the front. You know, you may hit the inner fender wells, but you can run them. And then I don't really understand unboxing videos myself, but I figured I'd do a quick unboxing for you because I suspect this is going to be nice shiny spindle parts. And let's see, reach down in here. All right, this looks like it's a steering arm. There we go. Oh yeah, nice shiny candy. Look at that, machine pockets and everything. So that's the steering arm. Let's go ahead and take the spindle out. This spindle is kind of set up to work with Corvette C6 stuff. So this is a Corvette C6 front bearing hub. Runs Corvette brakes. It's called the AFX spindle. So it's a really nice piece. It's cast and then machined down. You can see that's where the steering arm goes. So that's a really nice piece. Springs are from Draco Manufacturing. I think this particular spring is a 450 pound-inch. It's nice. They send you a little spring dyno result there. 450 pounds, smack on all the way across. And we have here is the shocks from JRI. That's custom valve for Speed Tech. All adjustable. And then they also send you a dyno report with the force per velocity, which is basically your damping. So you can get the line down here for your bound, up there for your rebound. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to start putting this on the car, and then I'll show you after it's done. And all the suspension components are on the subframe. So you should see a lot of familiar things from the previous clip now put on the subframe. The assembly is all fairly straightforward. It's just kind of bolt this, that, there in this order. One thing I'll come to is installing the bump stops, a slight change from the directions on what Speed Tech said, just as kind of a heads up. But anyways, you can see here we've got the AFX spindles, we've got the steering arms bolted into place now. Tie rods have been assembled. They go over to this Sweet Manufacturing rack and pinion rack, which is completely different from the steering box that was in the original car. So this should significantly help. It's got all the right shims. Speed Tech has all the right shims and stuff in place to really reduce the bump steer. Let's see, so yeah, we got the spindle, steering arm. Those are the JRI shocks there with the coil-overs. You might wonder why it's mounted with the body down. I know a lot of people tend to like to mount them body up because in theory that reduces the unsprung weight, which is the weight that's kind of traveling around with the wheels, the stuff that moves with the suspension. I did it this way in case, just so I can reach this adjuster a little bit easier. So if I'm at the autocross or the track, here's the damping adjuster, so it's easier to grab as opposed to getting down there and behind the wheel. And let's see what else here. I said something wrong in the last video I was saying, or last clip of the video I was saying those little adjuster pills that I talked about changed camber, and that's incorrect. Camber would be bringing this cross shaft in or out. They changed caster. So what happens with that is the forward and aft location of this top arm is going to lean that spindle back more or less, and that has an effect on the car's handling. If I want to change camber, which I will, what I'll do is come in here and you'll add shims in between this plate that's attached to the subframe and this cross shaft, but that'll come much later. And then if we look down here, what we've got is a spline sway bar, which is a spline shaft on this end. There's a spline shaft on the other, it goes all the way through. These clamp on, and that's your anti-roll bar. Let's see here, similar setup on the other side. And just a quick aside on the bump stop, as I mentioned, it suggests the Speed Tech instructions suggest to, let's see, you can't really see it. I got my bump stop right here, which is just a rubber nub, it's a bolt that threads up in there. They say to put this on basically last, and they remind you, hey, this is an area where paint or powder coat can build up, and so you might need to clear the threads. Well, if you do all this stuff first before you do that and clear the threads, you may have a hard time getting your tap up in there because the lower control arm here, see if I can get a better shot here. The lower control arm here will prevent you from getting a tap in here unless you've got a little bit of a shorter tap, which luckily I had one that just squeaked in there. So if you're doing this yourself, do yourself a favor, clean out these holes for the bump stops before you start doing anything else assembling the suspension, and you'll be a much happier camper. So that's all for this video. Talk to you guys later.